Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Still focusing on that, should it be, would be, speculated, proposed, whatever it is, economic emergency powers. Dr. Nweze joins us now. He's an economist. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
I mean, looking through all of those economic models, perhaps the ones that have been applied, yet we're still where we are in this recession. Do you think we need some sort of emergency, albeit economic powers?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because one is that there's the executive power is humongous, that you can do whatever you want to do. And then it's all about policy. If the policies are okay, and the implementers of those policies are also, there are square pegs and square holes and all that, then we're talking about you don't need any kind of powers. Because I think what is happening is, I think what the government is doing is testing the opinions of the people. You know, I think it's a strategy. Let's test how people will react to it. And then if the reaction is not favorable, they say, oh, we never said so, have you seen any bill, and all that. I think it's just a strategy, but again, it will do us more harm, you know, than good. You know, knowing the antecedent of those in power today, you know, with this military thing. We had this kind of thing.
So is it about the people or about the proposal itself?
No, it's about the people. What interests are they serving?
This?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The people making the coming up with the powers or the policies, and then the implementers of the policy. If we don't have good, you know, the economic literacy level is very low, because we need to understand, the policymakers need to have that a certain level of, you know, economic literacy to be able to understand how to make policies. And Nigerians also, or the implementers also, need to do the same, so that they will know the implication, you know, of their policies, you know, on the economy, on the masses at the end of the day. Okay. They need to be strategic in their thinking.
You were going to say we've done this before, but what's the implication?
Now, this thing is that the military, when the military were there, they had every power to do anything. What did they do? And that was one opportunity that Nigeria had to develop, but they didn't do it. Is it now that you want this? It's like going back to the military era.
Were we in recession at any time?
Of course. 1992. In fact, 1993, Babangida woke up in the morning and said that, that's President Ibrahim Babangida, that Nigeria's economy had defied all economic logic, because he expected the economy to collapse, but he did not. But, you know, it did not collapse because there was huge capital flight. You know, industries were closing down just like they're closing now. This is reminiscent of, you know, what happened in 1993. But again, you find that somehow we're able to get out of it. So the same way will happen. There's no systematic way. This government has not come up with any systematic way of getting out of this. It's not by emergency powers.
So there's somehow
something will happen.
In 1993 cannot happen now.
Yeah, something will happen.
Like what will happen?
I don't know. But there's, you know, sometimes I see that Nigeria's case is always different. But if you ask me if there's any systemic way of getting out of this, I'll say there's no plan. There's nothing that they have in place right now to get out of it. But again, I'll say, like, we can look at some countries that have also been in recession. Recession is not it's not a new thing. It's not something to die over, to, you know.
Dr. Nweze, yeah. We had a guest here one time who was talking about measures that could be taken to take us out of a recession. One of the things he talked about is easing of monetary policy. He says we should ease our monetary policy, but it looks like we're actually tightening instead of easing. Put that aside and then look at what the president is asking for. He's a man who has the entire nation on his shoulders and is looking for ways out. While the team is thinking this is another avenue, why can't we let him have this part?
No, he can't have
While the CBN is also looking at how to ease this.
No. He can't have that power because he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. If you give him that power, it will be worse off. You know? It will be worse off. Because one is that there are certain things that he has power to do. He can decide.
What does he have power to do in this kind of situation without the National Assembly looking over his shoulder and
No, because you need it. Let me give you an example. In 2008, 2009, during the global financial crisis, which led to economic crisis, what the United Nations did was to set up a committee, which was headed by Joseph Stiglitz, to look at a global way of monitoring, because money has gone mobile. Okay? So you need a global kind of institution that will oversee and supervise continental, national central banks. And that's why you have the African central banks, European central banks, and all that being supervised. That the whole idea was to enforce more regulations to make sure that this kind of thing does not happen again. And that's what I expect to do. If there are laws, if there are things that could be amended to make sure that ease of doing business, because Nigeria is 169 out of 189.
I was going to say, let's bring it down and make it a little more specific.
Yeah.
Given our situation now, I mean, manufacturing sector is complaining, they're talking about the monetary and fiscal policies. What specifically do we need to do now to see how it could get us, at least on our way out, that we don't need the powers for?
I think the president was talking some time ago. He said that his government is very prudent, and that's why we've been able to save and all that. And the concept of saving is that through investment you save. You cannot say that you're being prudent when your economy and you're contracting, when you're supposed to be expanding. You have run expansionary policies. We need to knock down the interest rate so that companies can also borrow money at a reasonable rate, to be able to do that. I'm not even talking about inflation. But if you increase your production...
How do you knock down the interest rate?
No, from the rate it is now, about 14% or thereabouts.
Is it going to be by fiat or
no, it should be below. It should be below. It's what the fiscal side, I think the monetary side is overwhelming the physical instead of the other way around. I have not heard the finance ministry coming up with what the government exactly wants. What is their vision? What do they want? How do we want to get out of this? We need to expand production. We need to begin to export. But again...
But they've been talking about this.
But the policies are hindering all these things.
What kind of policies would you want to see?
Let's say, for instance, let's take interest rate, for instance, because interest rate has a way of influencing the entire economy. If you want to run an expansionary system, you need to knock down your interest rate. Okay? When countries are in recession, what they do is to reduce their interest rate, even sometimes to zero, so that companies can expand, jobs be created, and all that. You don't tighten when you're supposed to be spending. So that is one thing. You don't save money when people are hungry. We need to, the monies that they said that they're savings and they have recovered and all that, we need to put it back into the system. We need to begin to make policies that will really bring down. The one interesting part is the interest rate. Once you get it right, and then not even the exchange rate should be eased, because you can't run a system like that.
Okay, let's bring in our colleague Mark, but she's got a question. Mark, go ahead.
Well, so for you, this is not just about. You were saying that this is not just about the situation. This is also about the people who will be asking for the powers. You don't think that the president has earned your trust enough to demand such powers. Could that also be it for you?
No, it doesn't. Because one is that his military, he's just a rookie in the democratic system. And once that, maybe my personal opinion is that he's not comfortable in this kind. He's used to military era where he has all the power, he can decide what to do and all that. That's what he's comfortable with. But he's still a rookie in terms of democratic principles and all that. So he's learning the ropes. And, and it's not really, it's about, let me give you an example. When the former Indonesia president, Suharto, was in power, the world was going through a crisis. What did he do? He formed a team. They called it the Berkeley Mafia. About 8 people, some Americans and all that. They sat down and they made policy. They were thinking. I'm not sure that we're putting enough thinking into all of this. So they were thinking on how to, what post-recession, and during a recession, what can the country do? And they began to invest and produce, and Indonesia began to export.
Why do you think the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is in support of it?
They don't understand the whole thing. If they are supporting it, I'm disappointed. If the Manufacturers Association is supporting it, I'm disappointed. Because it's all about policy. Make the right policies and all that. In the 80s, manufacturing was contributing over 13% to the GDP. And now it's less than 4%. if they have access to, to forex, because we are importing mostly what we consume, until we begin to produce what we consume. When you have over 70% of what you consume coming from outside.
So you think easing the interest rates will help the manufacturing sector?
It will help the manufacturing business and give them access to the foreign exchange, so that they can, but until gradually.
All right. Well, we'll stay on this when we come back in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Let's begin to take a look at some practical steps. You've talked about consistently how the fiscal policies should complement the monetary policies, but they will always tell you, yes, we're releasing funds for capital projects, we're reflating the economy, but we're yet to see the impact, are we?
No, because one is the monetary policy is supposed to complement the fiscal side, because this fiscal side is supposed to give direction. This is where we're headed.
Isn't the fiscal side doing that?
It's not clear. And that's why it's like the CBN, you see, the man is getting grayer every day, and losing weight instead of adding weight and all that. And every time, in fact, I feel sorry for him, because everybody's now looking at him as if he's the engine, the alpha and omega of the economy. But it's not so. It's just, if the government said, okay, we want a single digit, maybe interest rate of 9%, or inflation rate of 9%, then the CBN will get to work to begin to look at the instruments.
Can they compel the banks to ensure that the interest rates really goes low?
No, because if the CBN says, okay, the monetary policy committee decide that, look, we have to, reduce this, the banks will follow. Because why banks are doing 28% right now? Because of the costs.
But
the cost of funds.
The funds are short-term funds.
Yeah, because if CBN, the MPR rate is the 10%, for instance, you can't borrow money at that rate. No, because the banks have costs. The NDIC, they have a percentage. The other costs involved, and the banks have to make profits. So they added. That's why you get interest rate, even though officially it's 14% that the banks can borrow and all that. But when you go to the bank to borrow money, you can get it for 28, 30%. So there are costs involved. So it begins with them, the federal government, Minister of Finance, saying, look, we want the president saying, this is the vision I have for this. And it's all about vision. What vision do I have? What they're doing is taking things individually, but it's supposed to be holistic. First of all, we need to see a vision of how we want to run this economy, how we want to compete. Because statistics shows that about 79% or more of the West African economy is Nigeria. So how do we take advantage of this huge market that we have in West Africa and begin to produce goods and services? During Obasanjo's time, he had a policy, there was a policy to encourage export, which companies keyed into and retooled their factories just for the late President Yar'Adua to come and disbanded the whole thing. It was an export grant. Such policies will encourage production so that we can export. This foreign exchange and all that, once we produce, we begin to export, then you earn foreign exchange.
That's a good place to anchor. Dr. Austin Nweze is an economist. We've been talking about whether or not there should be some emergency economic powers to move the economy forward, but he thinks otherwise. Well, there you go. Thank you very much indeed for coming on this morning, Dr. Nweze. Well, that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm now Taigbe. Thank you.
And thank you, Maokpe Ogun.